Food safety in the home kitchen for families with young children. In this course, we will discuss food safety practices that can be used in your home kitchen to reduce your and your family's risk of developing a foodborne illness. This course will be taught in 2 lessons. In the first lesson, we will discuss strategies to keep our kitchens clean and prevent cross-contamination. In the second lesson, we will explore how temperature and other factors like food acidity influence the safety of our food during preparation and storage. Before we start with today's lesson, we want to get to know a little more about your current food safety knowledge and your feelings about the topics we will be discussing in this course. Please take 10 minutes to complete the survey. In today's lesson, we will learn cleaning and cross-contamination prevention techniques. Before we discuss these topics, we first want to introduce what foodborne illnesses are and provide background information illustrating the significance of foodborne illness in our daily lives. What is foodborne illness? A more common term for foodborne illness you might recognize is food poisoning or the stomach bug. Foodborne illness is caused by eating food and drinking beverages that are contaminated with foodborne illness-causing agents, including bacteria, viruses, and parasites. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, each year 1 in 6 people develops a foodborne illness. That is about 48 million Americans. Of those Americans who develop foodborne illness, approximately 128,000 are hospitalized and 3,000 die. While everyone is at risk for developing a foodborne illness, some people are at a higher risk for developing foodborne illness than others. Pregnant women, children under the age of 5, adults over the age of 65, and people with weakened immune systems have the highest risk of developing a foodborne illness. People in these groups have altered or weak immune systems that lower their body's ability to fight foodborne illness-causing agents. Even if you do not fall into one of these high-risk groups, it is possible for your immune system to be weakened due to factors like stress. Pregnant women undergo changes to their immune systems that leave them more susceptible to foodborne illness. Foodborne illness can be passed from the mother to the unborn child, which can have a severe consequence for the unborn child, including sickness, premature birth, miscarriage, stillbirth, or death. Children 5 years old and younger are more susceptible to foodborne illnesses because they do not have fully developed immune systems. Older adults' immune systems slow down and are less effective at identifying and fighting foodborne illness-causing agents. Older adults might take medications, which can have side effects that make their immune systems weaker. One of the most common causes of foodborne illness is a bacterium called E. coli. Raw or undercooked meats like ground beef and produce like lettuce and spinach are common food sources of E. coli. E. coli can be found in the intestines of humans and can be passed from person to person. Thoroughly cooking meat products, washing produce, and maintaining good personal hygiene can help prevent illness from E. coli. E. coli can be killed at a temperature of 160 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, which is why ground meat products should be cooked to an internal temperature of 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Another common foodborne bacterium is Salmonella. Raw eggs, poultry, and produce are common sources of Salmonella. Salmonella can also survive on low-moisture foods, or foods that don't contain a lot of water, like spices and flour. Most people are infected by Salmonella by eating foods contaminated by feces. Thoroughly cooking foods like eggs and poultry, washing produce, and maintaining good personal hygiene can help prevent illness from Salmonella. Salmonella can be killed at 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why poultry should be cooked to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Listeria monocytogenes is another foodborne bacterium. Raw milk, cheeses, especially soft cheese like queso fresco, seafood, hot dogs, and deli meats are common food sources of Listeria monocytogenes. Listeria monocytogenes can grow in refrigerators. Pregnant women are at a higher risk to be infected by Listeria monocytogenes. While pregnant women may experience mild symptoms, approximately 33% of Listeria monocytogenes maternal fetal infection cases end in the loss of the baby. Now we will do a short activity. Please take a few minutes to form small groups and discuss your answers to the following questions. Where do most foodborne illness outbreaks happen? Do you think you can get foodborne illnesses at home? Throughout this course, we are going to describe how we would make a dish for our families. As a class, we will choose one recipe to use as an example. Please take a few moments as a class to decide if we will make tacos, tres leches, brownies, or meatloaf. Now that we have chosen the dish we will make, we will discuss how to start preparing this dish. Using your activity handout, please take 10 minutes to list the supplies you would need to prepare your dish, using the recipe as a guide. List the steps you would use to prepare the dish up to the point where you would cook the dish or bake the dish. For each step you list, record the kitchen location number where the step will be performed. For each step you list, record the kitchen location number where the step will be performed. Kitchen location numbers and a description of each location are located on the kitchen diagram included in your activity handbook. We will review your responses to the activity later in the lesson. Now we will start our discussion about cleaning. As we previously discussed, maintaining good personal hygiene can help prevent the spread of foodborne illness. Everyone should wash their hands. What are some examples of when we should wash our hands? Some answers might include before and after handling certain foods, after using the bathroom, after handling pets, and after handling trash. How we wash our hands can affect the number of bacteria we remove from our hands. What are the recommended steps for hand washing? The steps for hand washing are to wet your hands with clean, warm water, lather your hands with soap, and scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds to remove bacteria. Rinse the soap off your hands under clean, warm water and dry your hands. The steps for hand washing are to wet your hands with clean, warm water, lather your hands with soap, and scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds to remove bacteria. Rinse the soap off your hands under clean, warm water and dry your hands. Clean, dry cloth towels or paper towels are the most sanitary options for drying your hands. Air dryers should be avoided because they recirculate air and can recontaminate your hands. Some of the foods we eat need to be washed. Can you tell which of the fruits and vegetables should be washed? Should bell peppers be washed? The correct answer is yes. What about jalapenos? Yes. Cantaloupe? Yes. Tomatoes? Yes. Products purchased at the store can be contaminated during harvest, transportation to the store, and by store employees or other shoppers. What about prepackaged baby spinach? The answer is no. Prepackaged baby spinach has been washed by the manufacturer and is clean and ready to use. What about vegetables picked from a garden? The correct answer is yes. These vegetables should be washed because vegetables can be contaminated by foodborne illness-causing agents in the soil. What about produce from farmers markets? Yes, produce from farmers markets should be washed, just like produce purchased at the store. What about meat products? Should whole chicken be washed? The correct answer is no. Pork chops? No. Bacon? No. Ground meat? No. Washing meat products does not remove all of the bacteria. Some bacteria that is removed by the running water can spread onto nearby surfaces through water droplets. Instead, raw meat products should be cooked to the recommended internal temperature to kill the bacteria. We are going to watch a video to illustrate why washing meat products is not recommended. As you can see, the bacteria from the poultry was spread onto nearby surfaces by water droplets. Kitchen utensils and equipment used to prepare food, as well as surfaces like counters, sinks, and stoves, should be cleaned and sanitized. Cleaning is the physical removal of dirt from the surface. Sanitizing is the removal of pathogens from the clean surface. Looking at this image, what do you think should be cleaned or washed? You might have said that you need to wash your hands with soap and water, or that we need to wash the countertops, or food like fresh produce, our utensils that we use, and cutting boards. Looking at the same picture, what should be sanitized? Countertops should be sanitized, the utensils that we use, and the cutting board. To clean food preparation utensils, equipment, and surfaces, hot soapy water should be used. To sanitize these items, you should follow the instructions described on the label of the sanitizer to prepare the solution. If you do not want to make your own sanitizer, sanitizers can be purchased at many supermarkets. Always follow the recommended uses and safety instructions on the label of household cleaners and sanitizers that you purchase. Kitchen linens, like kitchen towels, dishcloths, and pot holders, should be washed often in hot, soapy water. The process for cleaning and sanitizing includes removing dirt and food debris by first rinsing and second using a scrubber with soap. The third step is to rinse off all of the soap, and then fourth, apply a sanitizer and let the utensils, equipment, or surfaces air dry. Remember to clean and sanitize. The next topic we are going to discuss is cross-contamination. Cross-contamination is the unintentional transfer of microorganisms from one surface to another. How do bacteria spread? Bacteria can be spread by your hands, knives, and other utensils, meat juices, cutting boards, and counters. All of these can cross-contaminate other surfaces or food. What other examples can you think of? Food storage methods can help prevent cross-contamination. Ready-to-eat foods should be stored above raw foods. Meat should be stored on the bottom shelf to prevent cross-contamination from meat juices. Produce can be stored in a produce drawer. If your refrigerator does not have a produce drawer, store produce above raw meat. To thaw meat, poultry, or seafood in the refrigerator, place them on a plate or in a container to prevent their juices from dripping onto other foods. Cover or store food in containers with lids. Let's practice identifying potential cross-contamination events. Can you identify the cross-contamination hazard or hazards in each picture? What's wrong with this picture? Ready-to-eat produce is on the same cutting board as raw meat. The produce could be contaminated by meat juices. To prevent cross-contamination, separate ready-to-eat foods from raw meat and meat juices. What about this picture? The cutting board and knife that was used to cut the chicken is being used to prepare ready-to-eat vegetables. To prevent cross-contamination, use separate cutting boards and use a clean knife. What's wrong with this picture? The spoon containing raw cookie dough is contaminating the counter, and it is close to ready-to-eat food. To prevent cross-contamination, raw and ready-to-eat food should be separated. If utensils used on raw products are placed on food preparation surfaces, the surfaces should be cleaned and sanitized to prevent cross-contamination of ready-to-eat foods. What do you see that's incorrect about this picture? Food is stored uncovered and can become contaminated. Some raw meat is not stored on the bottom shelf. The meat is above or near ready-to-eat food. To prevent cross-contamination, all food should be covered and the meat should be stored on the bottom shelf or in a meat drawer. Remember to avoid cross-contamination. Let's review the activity handout we completed at the start of the lesson. Are there any changes you would make to your process? Practice cleaning and sanitizing, as well as avoiding cross-contamination. In today's lesson, we will discuss proper cooking, chilling, and storage practices and their importance in preventing foodborne illness. Last week, we discussed food handling procedures. Let's begin today's session with a quick discussion question. What did you do to clean and avoid cross-contamination last week? Let's pick up with the recipe that we chose to make in the last lesson. On your activity handout, list the cooking or baking steps you would need to perform and how you would store leftovers. We will review your activity responses later in the session. Let's begin our discussion with the danger zone. The danger zone is a concept that describes the temperature range at which bacteria can thrive and multiply. The danger zone ranges from 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. From a food safety perspective, we want to avoid letting our food stay in the danger zone for too long to prevent the rapid growth of potential harmful bacteria. The danger zone applies to perishable foods, which are foods that will spoil if they are not refrigerated. Perishable foods include meat, produce, and dairy products. Just like humans, some bacteria need oxygen to survive. Others can survive without oxygen. One bacterium that can grow without oxygen is Clostridium botulinum, which can cause botulism. Clostridium botulinum produces a deadly toxin. 1 teaspoon of toxin can kill 100,000 people. Never purchase or use swollen cans, as this could be an indicator of Clostridium botulinum. Another way to prevent our food from growing pathogens is to control the acidity of the food product. pH is defined as the acidity of a food product. It is measured on a scale from 1 to 14, with 1 being the most acidic and 14 being the most basic. If the pH of a food is less than or equal to 4.6, the food is considered acidic, and the growth of pathogens can be prevented. Lemons are an example of an acidic food. The pH of a lemon ranges from 2.2 to 2.4. If the pH of a food is greater than 4.6, it is considered a low-acid food. Many pathogens can grow in low-acid foods. Milk is an example of a low-acid food. Milk has a pH range of 6.3 to 8.5. This chart shows the pH range for some common foods. pH is an important consideration when making canned products. Sealing the can creates an anaerobic environment. If you recall from the oxygen requirement slide, we discussed how Clostridium botulinum can grow and produce toxins in anaerobic environments. One way to control the bacterial growth in canned foods is to adjust the pH to less than 4.6. Lowering the pH can be accomplished by adding a high-acid ingredient like lemon juice, vinegar, or citric acid. pH control is important for ready-to-eat foods like salsa. Even if you plan to cook the canned product, controlling the pH is important. Cooking may not destroy toxins produced by pathogenic bacteria. Another important concept to understand in controlling pathogen growth is water activity. Water activity is the water that is not bound and is available in the food products to support the growth of bacteria, yeast, and mold. If the water activity of a food is less than 0.85, the growth of pathogens can be prevented. Fruits, vegetables, and meat products have water activities that are higher than 0.85, which makes them susceptible to pathogenic growth. Foods such as crackers have lower water activities. Foods with low water activities are not considered at risk for pathogen growth. However, just because bacteria aren't growing doesn't mean the food is not contaminated. For example, although flour has a low water activity, there have been recent flour recalls due to pathogen contamination. Now we have an activity to illustrate how fast bacteria can grow. Given these growth counts and time points, can anyone guess how many bacteria there will be after 3 hours? If you said 512, then you are correct. You can see just how quickly a potentially harmful pathogen can replicate itself in our food, creating a sufficient dosage to make us sick. However, sometimes it doesn't take a very large number of bacteria to make us sick. In the case of E. coli, it is possible to get sick from as few as 10 E. coli. It is recommended that you refrigerate your food within 2 hours after buying it at the grocery store to limit potential pathogen growth. Early cooking meat can reduce the risk of consumers developing foodborne illness. How can you tell when your chicken or your burger is done? Chicken and burgers should be cooked to the recommended internal temperatures. Internal temperatures should be measured with a calibrated thermometer. The recommended internal temperature for chicken is 165 degrees Fahrenheit, and the recommended temperature for burger is 160 degrees Fahrenheit. If you buy mechanically tenderized beef, you need to cook it to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, just like burger meat. When using a cooking thermometer, make sure the thermometer is not touching the skillet or dish in which the meat is being cooked. Note that in the picture of the burger has been picked up with the tongs to measure the temperature. This method can be used to measure the internal temperature of foods when the thermometer sensor is not located on the thermometer's tip. When inserting the thermometer, make sure it does not touch bone, fat, or gristle, because this may not give an accurate reading. Here are the USDA recommended cooking temperatures for meat and poultry. For whole cuts of pork, beef, and lamb, the recommended temperature is 145 degrees Fahrenheit, plus a 3-minute rest time. This means when your meat reaches 145 degrees Fahrenheit, you can remove it from the heat source and wait for 3 minutes before consuming it. During the rest time, the meat's temperature stays at 145 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, which kills harmful bacteria. The recommended safe temperature for all fresh poultry products is 165 degrees Fahrenheit. For ground meat, such as burger, the recommended temperature is 160 degrees Fahrenheit, which is higher than the temperature required for whole cuts of red meat. This is because during the grinding process, harmful bacteria that is on the surface of the meat can be transferred throughout the meat that is ground up, and then when this meat is formed into a patty, the harmful bacteria can now be inside the burger instead of just on the surface. Now let's discuss how to safely store leftovers. Leftovers can pose a food safety risk depending on the length of time they have been in the refrigerator and whether they are incorrectly reheated. Here are some questions about leftovers. Let's see if anyone knows or can guess the answers to them. The first question is, how long can perishable foods be left at room temperature before they need to be refrigerated? The correct answer is 2 hours. What if it's a hot day? The time is reduced to 1 hour. In general, perishable foods can be left at room temperature for 2 hours before refrigerating. However, if it's hot outside, that time is reduced to only 1 hour, since many types of bacteria like warm environments and will multiply more quickly in this more favorable environment. How should you store a big pot of soup? It is recommended to store soup in separate, smaller portions. Using shallow storage containers is a good way to do this. Storing leftovers in smaller, individual portions allows all the soup to freeze or cool adequately in the refrigerator to prevent pathogen growth. A large portion of soup cools more slowly, allowing some of the pathogens to grow. How do you know if your leftovers have been sufficiently reheated? Use a cooking thermometer to verify the temperature of the leftovers is at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Now we're going to be moving on to the chill section, where we'll discuss how to ensure that your refrigerator is at the proper temperature to keep your food safe. Has anyone thought about if the temperature of the refrigerator is cold enough? Most of us don't think too much about ensuring our refrigerators are cold enough because we might assume that our refrigerators will maintain a safe temperature. However, this is not always the case. What are some ways we can tell if our refrigerator is cold enough? What are some ways we can tell if our refrigerator is cold enough? And what is the temperature our refrigerator should be set to? A refrigerator thermometer is the best way to tell if our refrigerator is set to 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Some refrigerators have a built-in thermometer that can be located on the outside or the inside of your refrigerator, like the one shown in this picture. If your refrigerator does not have a built-in thermometer, it is possible to purchase a thermometer at a reasonable price. Here are some examples of thermometers you might find in the store. Foods that are stored at room temperature can also pose a food safety risk. It is important to keep your non-perishable foods in an area of your pantry away from where you keep your cleaning supplies and any other potentially toxic substances. If you are unsure if a chemical is toxic, you can look at the container's label to see if the manufacturer has put a warning on it. Sometimes we store non-perishable foods outside of their original containers. If you do this, make sure you record the item's lot code, expiration date, and manufacturer in case of a recall. Finally, keep your food in sealed containers. Bugs and other pests are present in our homes and can contaminate food that is not properly sealed. Let's do another activity. Throughout this course, we have provided safe food handling information. What other sources of information can you trust? Some examples of sources you can trust are government agencies, like the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, from the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, from the Partnership for Food Safety Education, from local extension offices, and from local health departments. Use caution when viewing food safety information on social media. Would you make any changes to how you would cook or store the dish you chose to make? Remember to practice taking the temperature of your foods and to check the temperature of your refrigerator.